After the good progress we made last week on the walls and windows on the front of the extension, this week we're continuing our work on the openings and walls on the entrance side, which I'm hoping will create some equally exciting changes, especially some of the views it should open up. And I'll also be starting some work in this area, which could lead to some fairly dramatic changes as to how things look. And on the first morning, the sky was looking pretty dramatic when I arrived to open up. And as I was getting light into the upstairs workspace, Haggy and Miguel arrived. Bom dia, Haggy. But Photo needed to be somewhere else that morning, so to start with, the three of us would have to cover his duties. Especially on the mortar mixing and lifting that was needed for the work on the two new windows the team were working on. I marked out some lines for a next bit of work. While Haggy and Miguel started removing stones and rebuilding edges. And then mid-morning saw the welcome return of Sam, who has worked on site in a couple of previous phases of work. After the mid-morning break, the team returned to the walls, with Miguel now spending some time filling in a small old window next to the new one. With Sam in charge of supporting the masons, I now headed down to the shed to clear an area below it for some upcoming work. The final prep work below the shed was to uncover the old steps that the rock pile had slipped over.
Cuando miraron otra ventana, no sé qué pasó.
Day 2 started with a clear sky and the full moon still out, and it was pretty chilly when I and then the team arrived. And before the sun was fully out, we tried to use the laser to confirm some outside measurements for the next window that Hagi would now be working on. And with Photo back on site and ready to manage mortar supplies, the team could crack on with their window work. With a bit of support upstairs for the mortar delivery and picking out better stones from the rubble. As Photo and I started to move stones from the floor upstairs to outside, where they would be needed later on. The architect was back on site to review recent work and to discuss some details for next week. And immediately after that, I was happy to welcome Gary to the house, who is from the UK but lives near Barcelona. After catching up on the team's progress, I had some time for a late lunch. And then had to recheck some measures on the window Haggy was now working on to decide on a change to the beams that were needed, and then listing more beams that Haggy would need to pick up the next morning. Well, progress today has been a little bit slower than I had hoped, and I've done a lot less work than I had wanted to do, and a lot more talking than I would usually do, whether with the architect, the builder, or the visitor. And so I haven't been able to get on to doing any work in this area and on the shed, which I have spent a lot of time on in the last year and before that, and with it having the best views in the whole of the property, it's probably just about my favourite place. So I am a bit sad that the time has come to start dismantling it. But I am happy to say that this is not to get rid of it completely, but rather to prepare it for rebuilding at a level that will work better for everything else around it. And you might not be surprised to know that I don't intend to knock it all down quickly with a big machine, which will be quite easy to do, but rather to try to take it down bit by hand so that I can separate out the different parts and reuse them where possible. And also during the process to try to present the wall as it once was before the shed was added to it. But I'm not sure how possible that's going to be, so I'll just have to give it my best go. And I hope to get started on that tomorrow. Although if my attention is drawn to other things, it might be a bit later on. On the third morning, I was hoping to do some shed work sooner rather than later, but after a quick briefing with Miguel, it was agreed that finding and organising some suitable stones for his next work was now a priority. So first up, I needed to organise the stones that had come from upstairs. While Miguel and Fodo took down scaffolding for creating some more space in this area. Haggy then arrived with more beams for more openings. And Rex was back on the site and straight into action, helping find better stones for Miguel, which he was going to be using for a new buttress that he would now be building.
¿No ligada? Ah, sí, pensaba que quería poner bien ahí.
La ligada.
Oh, very good. Yep. This is exactly for this. I'm thinking I'd do it, but
Hay que levantar y poner el fondo.
Arriba.
Ponle tu forma.
after some final measurements for the buttress and final organising of stones, Rex and I were released temporarily from stone finding duty. As Miguel got started with the base of the new buttress directly onto the bedrock below. And I moved on to the shed roof to start work on dismantling the top layers of tiles and to see what was beneath them. Around lunchtime, I had to head out for some living in Spain admin. And when I arrived back, I was keen to check on progress. Before heading back out to pick up some big stones that I had just seen on the roadside that I thought might have good square edges that Miguel needed for his work. And with the team finishing for the day, I closed up the house before heading back to work onto the top of the shed. Day 4 started with an unusually bright sky and some unusual background noise as some massive machines passed the house for some work on paths in the forest. And once the team were able to get past the big machines and into the house, they got straight back to mortar mixing, the lower window, and the buttress. While I was back looking for square edge stones for Miguel's buttress work, with help from Rex, who was kindly back for a second day in a row, mostly to help with the next phase of the shed dismantling.
Vos te vas a hacer fotos, más. Y pone pelo aquí, no sin pelo, ¿eh?
Ready? Yeah. Go. After testing the strength of the walls with the sledgehammer, we quickly realised that the walls were stronger than we thought and that the power hammer was going to be needed. Cheers, Rex. After checking the team's progress and setting up the second generator for refilling the water deposit, I was back to work on the shed, working my way down to the orange line, which is the level that the shed roof will be at in the future. And after reaching the orange line, it was time for a break and a late lunch.
Cerro aquí también.
Sí. After the team left for the day, I headed back for some final work on the wall in increasingly windy conditions, which weren't strong enough to blow over the wall, but were still causing me some problems. And with the wall down to the old stone line, I decided to stop for the day. On the last day of the week, I had some early morning things to do, so the team opened up and were working when I arrived, with Haggy now clearing away the exterior remnants of the old small window, and Miguel preparing the wall connections for the higher parts of the buttress. While I headed indoors and upstairs to start a big tidy up of the extension area, now that the initial window and wall work of this space is complete. I say initial because there is a lot more work to do for the finishes of the window edges and the walls. While the guys are on their mid-morning break, I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk a bit about the work that Miguel is doing in that area there on the new buttress, both to answer some questions from the last video and to preempt any that are added to this one. First of all, the reason that we're doing any of the work here is to have the new wider door opening as per the green lines that I put in last week. But to do that, we're going to have to take out the old buttress here, or contrafuerte as they call it locally. And there's been much discussion between me, the builders and the architect about the reason that that buttress is there and whether it's okay to take it out. As to the reason why it's there, we've aligned on a couple of main explanations. The first relates to a line or a bit of a step that runs across about halfway up the wall. And we think that's evidence that this wall was probably only built to that level when it was first constructed, and that when they did that work, it might have been just for an animal shed, and we think the builders might have been slightly less concerned about the quality of the wall there. And it's definitely not absolutely straight, it's got a little bit of a bulge in it, and we think that when they then added the wall above it, they might have put the contrafuerte in at that stage to make sure that the lower wall was strong enough. And then the second reason is that in the opening there, again, because of the slight curve that is in the wall, the doorway top is not absolutely straight with the wall. We will make it straight when we put the new one in. But as a result of it not being straight, we think that for the second theory that that contrafuerte might have been put in just to hold the right edge of that doorway. Now the builders aren't convinced that a new buttress is actually required because they think that that wall is pretty stable even if we took the old buttress out. But as a precaution, we've all agreed it'd be sensible to put a new one in to the other side of where the new doorway will be. And it's got a slightly better angle to open up the space nicely. And it's also much closer to the middle of the wall and lined up with an internal wall on the other side, both of which we think will actually make it stronger and giving more support than the old one here. Anyway, Miguel has now been working on it for 2 and a bit days, and I have to say, I think it's looking very beautiful and it's going to become a real feature of the house, having previously thought it was just going to be a bit of a pain to have to rebuild one.
Bon nari.
Seeing this whole area now opened up with the light coming in from the new windows has been really exciting for me. And a couple of surprises. For instance, I particularly like now the view through this new window, which for the first time gives me a view of the hill behind. But of all the new windows, this one here is perhaps the one that I've been most looking forward to and I'm most excited about.
Trae la cabeza.
Igual que todas las semanas. Igual de que todas las semanas. Si no hacemos una cosa, hacemos otra.
Sí. And that is the end of work for this week, during which the transformation of the extension has continued with the addition of 3 new windows, each of which has brought light into the house and opened up new views from the inside. And as the first part of transforming this next side wall, Miguel has just finished the new buttress. So next week we should be able to get on with creating more openings on that wall. And while the team have been busy on this side of the house, I have had a busy couple of days with the help of Rex dismantling the shed, which has opened up a whole lot of different views and temporarily given me a little bit of a dilemma about how and where I'm going to start and finish my videos. So please do tune in next week to see what I decide.